Imagine your child cycling off for their paper round route late on a summer's afternoon and then simply vanishing. And that is the chilling reality for the family of 13-year-old Genette Tate in the quiet village of Ellesmere, Devon, in this disappearance that has haunted the nation for nearly 5 decades. On Saturday the 19th of August 1978, the morning began just like any other. Genette set off at around 2 p.m. for a paper round, as she had done for a week so far, filling in for the local paper boy. She had collected her bundle of papers from the White Horse Inn as usual, and there was nothing to suggest that this day was anything out of the ordinary. Around an hour later, at roughly 3:28 p.m, Genette bumped into her friends on a small bridge, already having delivered 14 newspapers. She stopped for a chat before pushing a bike up a small incline with them and cycling off ahead. Then, between 5 and 10 minutes later, those same friends walking along the path in the direction that Genette had set off were met with a concerning sight. Her bike lay in the middle of Withen Lane, newspapers scattered around, with no sign of Genette. They called her name, looked along the hedgerows, but there was no response. The alarm was raised, and within hours the situation quickly escalated, with a serious search and rescue effort being kicked off. The search was well resourced, with 70 officers, 50 detectives, mounted patrols, search dogs, and even the Royal Marines wading through muddy streams and an RAF helicopter scanning the area via the skies. But as dawn broke, there was nothing. Suggestions of Genette possibly running away from her home were discounted, as at the time of her disappearance, she had no personal effects on her, other than the clothes that she was wearing. Additionally, left behind at home was a jar of money that she had been saving for a family holiday that they had planned. A theory of a hit-and-run accident was also on the table, but ruled out as there were no tyre marks at the scene, and her bicycle was undamaged. One possible lead that the police had was a man, reported to be seen in the area by eyewitnesses driving a maroon-coloured Triumph, and described as being in his early 20s with a pale complexion. Police had issued a photo fit of the man, but nobody ever came forward. Unfortunately, despite extensive investigations, Genette's disappearance remains unsolved. 16 years later, Robert Black, a serial killer who was convicted of multiple child abductions and murders in 1994, was questioned by police, as during the time of her disappearance, he was working as a long-distance van driver and was known to have been in the surrounding area, with eyewitnesses claiming to have seen his van at Exeter Airport. However, the CPS ultimately decided in 2008 that there was not enough evidence to charge Black with the murder of Genette. 47 years on, there are still no solid leads and no closure. Despite this, her parents have never given up on the efforts to get answers, and in August 2018, John Tate, Genette's father, made a further plea for information, also stating, "I am not even 100% sure that Black did it. I need proof that Black killed her." And sharing that unfortunately, due to his rapidly declining health, he could no longer make the annual trip to Ellesmere on the anniversary of the disappearance, and all that he wanted was to give his daughter a dignified burial and to be buried alongside her. Tragically, John passed away 2 years later in 2020, without answers. March 1971. A skull is found by the River Trent in Staffordshire, uncovering a shallow grave containing the remains of a man, bound and buried in a kneeling position, later given the name of Fred the Head. On Friday the 26th of March, David Nathan, an off-duty special constable, headed to a secluded area behind an abandoned flint mill for some shooting practice. Along the way, he tripped over what he initially thought to be a bag of cement, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to find. He looked closer and made a horrifying discovery. What he'd found poking through the earth was actually a human skull. The bag of cement was actually a mound of dirt, covering a shallow grave and buried 4 feet deep. The location, being remote and reachable only by a locked footbridge had meant that somebody had gone to great lengths to conceal him. Police were called and uncovered the body, buried kneeling, with his wrists and ankles bound. They were wearing no clothes except for a pair of socks with mustard-coloured heels, and a woman's golden wedding ring worn on his right hand. The findings led police to suspect a murder. The body was examined and revealed that they believed he had died 12 to 18 months prior. They had extensive dental work carried out roughly 6 months before passing, which included a partial upper denture. The socks he was wearing were purchased from a market stall in Burton, and the wedding ring was manufactured between 1967 and 68 by Henry Showell, a jeweller in the jewellery quarter of Birmingham. He was also believed to have been physically fit, in good shape, with well-kept fingernails, although he likely suffered from torticollis, a condition affecting the neck muscles, which would have caused his head to lean to the right. 3 years' worth of investigations followed every lead and explored the unique details of the man. They carried out fingerprint checks, dental records, and DNA profiling. There were even media appeals. In 2017, a facial reconstruction suggested he may have been John Henry Jones, a man missing from North Wales in the 1970s. However, a subsequent DNA test disproved it. Despite all of this time and the numerous appeals, nobody has ever come forward. To this day, Fred remains a mystery. Was he a victim of organised crime, a tragic case of mistaken identity, or something stranger? Espionage, even ritualistic killing? No theory has ever been proven, and ultimately, Fred lies buried twice. Once in that shallow grave beneath the Staffordshire soil, and again beneath decades of unanswered questions. Imagine leaving home to help a friend, disappearing, only to be found 250 miles away in a critical condition. That's what happened to 15-year-old Peter Watts in 1976, a case that is as baffling as it is heartbreaking. It was a typical winter Sunday in Colwyn Bay. Mark Watts, Peter's brother, put his head around Peter's bedroom door to say goodbye before leaving for a driving lesson with their parents. Whilst they were out at around 4 p.m, Peter left home, leaving behind a note for his parents to say that he was off to help a friend with homework. By evening, he was officially reported missing. The main lead came from a British rail clerk. He recalled a boy handing over a £10 note for a ticket to Chester on that first evening, though he wasn't certain it was Peter. Still, this train journey became the key focus of the investigation. Tragically, however, unbeknownst to the local police, Peter would be discovered by a taxi driver at around 1:30 in the following morning, 250 miles away in North London, beneath a vehicle-only underpass in a critical state, where sadly, by 2:30 a.m, he had succumbed to his injuries. For a week, the police forces in North Wales treated Peter as still missing and wouldn't make the connection between this disappearance and the discovery of this young teenager. The coroner recorded the cause of death as severe head injuries consistent with a fall, yet there was no road debris in the wound to suggest a road traffic collision, nor signs of a struggle. In fact, Peter was reported to have been remarkably clean. Another detail of note is that Peter's personal belongings, including his watch and glasses, were missing. So was it an abduction, a murder, a tragic accident? Some speculated he set out on a solo sightseeing trip and ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time. Others believe that he was the victim of a robbery gone wrong. However, Peter was studious, and he was unlikely to have travelled alone. His father appears to be convinced that Peter was abducted, stating, "I think he may have been abducted. He was a friendly boy, easy with people, and I don't believe he went on his own free will." Ultimately, a coroner's jury concluded murder by a person or persons unknown. But how he ended up there remains a mystery. To this day, Peter's family left with more questions than answers. Why did he go to London? Did he meet somebody? What secrets travelled with him that night?